So good evening. We're going to start in about 3 minutes or so. Just to encourage people, if you're coming in, don't be shy, don't be a good Anglican and sit fairly far forward. Anglicans apparently have this bad habit of sitting in the furthest back rows as they can. So we'll get going in a few minutes, thanks. And just maybe a couple housekeeping pieces. There's a washroom right around the corner here to the right. And there's a camera right here that will be live streaming the event. So just be aware of this camera as you walk back and forth here. Or maybe don't walk back and forth right here if you can avoid it.
Put him in whenever he arrives, yeah. Presumably, well, we'll keep an eye on Wendy. She can identify him. Yeah. Okay?
Yep. You know that camera's on back here, walking in front of it. Welcome and good evening. Thanks everyone for being here tonight, and we'll just let the guest of honor get his seat here, get organized. So thanks for coming out on this cold evening, it's really a privilege to be gathered together here. My name is Bob Burkholder, and my connection with Charlie is primarily through this parish, the parish of St. James, where we've made music together and worshiped together for many years. And I am going to ask that people keep masks on, but if you're up here speaking, feel free to take it off. I think it makes for a bit clearer projection. Just before we start, and I did talk with Charlie about this, we were saddened today to learn that one of our St. James choristers passed away last evening, Irene Swift. So we wish her family our prayers and condolences, and she'll be missed. And she was part of the fabric of this parish and of the music fabric of this parish. So we just want to keep her in mind tonight. I think she would have loved to be here, and who knows, maybe she's watching. Wendy, I told Wendy a funny story right before this, and she said that I should tell it. So here we go. In 2014, the parish was looking for a new music director. And so I was in the choir at the time, and I think at least 3 candidates came through, one of whom was Charlie. And then we had a chance to write on the ballot who we would want. And Charlie, I've never told you this, but I didn't vote for you. And you know what? I was wrong. And I'm glad that wisdom prevailed and that you came to be with us. So thanks. Yeah. And I would vote for you today, for sure. So tonight, ostensibly, is to acknowledge and honor the contribution that Charlie's made in his years here as musical director at St. James, 2014 to 2020. I think he gave it up for Lent in 2020. And so Charlie retired from this role in the height of the pandemic and lockdown. And there was never really an opportunity for us to gather collectively to celebrate with him, to wish him well. So here we are tonight, somewhat delayed, but no less heartfelt. However, Charlie has a long and varied career in music, and I know we're going to hear more about that later. So while this evening is branded as a celebration of his retirement, we're going to hear from a number of the numerous seasons of his musical ministry, which is much broader than St. James. So we really look forward to that. I think retirement, in the broader sense of the word, is a bit of a misnomer for Charlie, because his love of music seems in no way diminished, even as he's faced various health challenges and has stepped back from some paid and professional roles. He continues to have music in his heart and his core being, and will continue to be his lifelong companion, I'm sure, Charlie. So a special thanks to Michael Capon, current music director here, and I didn't have a chance to vote for or against him. So I don't know how he got in, but he got in. We're glad he did. Charlie's partner, Wendy Luella Perkins, who you'll see she had quite a role here tonight. Megrig back on the sound system and the video, and we're live streaming here, just so folks know. So if you walk in front of this camera, the world will get to see you. And Marty, Jordan, and Tim, and Linda, thanks for coordinating the food for this evening. I know you don't see any food here, but thanks for helping this evening to happen. So sit back and be ready to listen and learn, to sing and to laugh, to celebrate and to give thanks for Charlie and his gifts of music. And we're going to gather after this program next door, through this door in the fellowship room, for a time of visiting, of snacking, continuing to celebrate Charlie, so make sure you plan to stay around for that. Charlie's a man of deep faith, and we're going to start off with the singing of a hymn, O God, our help in ages past. And this is going to be done by Michael Capon and all assembled. So sing, if it's easier for you to sing standing, which most musicians would say it is, do so. I think it's going to be up here. Great singing, folks. Thanks. I'm going to call on Wendy now. I think most of you know Wendy, and I'll let her introduce herself. And she's going to walk us through 60 years. So I figure maybe by 10 o'clock or so she'll be wrapping up. I'm not sure. Okay, Wendy, thanks.
You know me well, Bob. Hi, everyone. It is really good to be here tonight and to see you and to celebrate Charlie and his retirement from St. James, but also this many, many years of service. I really just want to thank everybody at St. James, too, that made this happen tonight, and everyone who is going to be sharing stories and songs this evening. So I am Charlie's wife, partner. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister, and I'm a companion to this man. And it's really my honor to offer an overview of Charlie's life and ministry, musical ministry, and to share a few stories and insights about what kept him at this for about 64 years. Later this evening, some other folks will speak about different phases of his life, really from the 1960s through to today. So I thought I would actually focus a little bit on his earlier years, which are really interesting and very formative in how he came to really commit his life to sharing music in Christian communities. I want to thank, too, Charlie for his generosity in sharing so many stories with me over the years, and in this preparation for tonight of sharing more stories. And it really is a joy to hear those, to share them with you. And Charlie has an amazing memory, so he can just regale for quite a long time. And, you have to put a stop at some point. But it was, but honestly, it was really, really beautiful. And I heard some stories I'd never heard before. So it was an honor to have that experience, actually. We've been together for 28 years, and to hear new things. So here goes. Some of Charlie's earliest memories are of live music in his home. His dad, Chuck, played the French horn in a band, and he sang in choirs. And his mom, Ruth, played the piano at home. And little Charlie would sit next to his mom and watch her play and listen to her play, and then fiddle around with the keys himself, like children do. And Ruth, his mom, really encouraged him in all forms of creativity, especially in the piano, but in other things as well. And so he had fun. He enjoyed it. Charlie remembers learning his first 2 full piano pieces at the age of about 8. One was the novelty song, "I Said My Pajamas and Put On My Prayers." And he can sing the whole thing for you now later on if you want to hear that one. It's a really good one, and there's a whole story around that too, anyway. And the 12-bar blues piece, "Rag Mop." She taught him by ear, note by note, chord by chord. And he played these songs for his grade 3 class. And as you might imagine, his mom was so proud of him. Her little Charlie, her eldest of 5 boys. Exactly. She was so proud of him, in fact, that she had him play for the ladies who came over for tea. Now, sometimes that worked out well, but he was 8, so sometimes not so well. Charlie's earliest memories of the organ were also from when he was around 8 years old, at the Presbyterian church that he and his family attended in Geneseo, New York, which is about 30 miles south of Rochester. After church one morning, his mom took him over to meet the organist, Miss Dobbin. Charlie was enchanted by the chimes feature of the organ and was given permission to play 1 note on the chimes. Well, Charlie had a hymn that he'd memorized on the piano at home. I will make you fishers of men if you follow me. How does that go? I will make you fishers of men, fishers of men. So he had that in his heart. So instead of playing the one note, didn't that rascal Charlie play the whole damn song in those chimes? And near the end of the piece, the superintendent rushed in saying, "Do you know this is being broadcast all over town?" It was ringing out. So I guess we can say that Charlie's very first organ performance was in 1950 at the age of 8. Yeah. And in that next year, Charlie started to take piano lessons from Miss Dobbin. And he took lessons for 5 months, but then was drawn outside in the summer by baseball. And he quit his lessons. And that could have been it for Charlie. And like many children who start piano lessons or violin lessons or any kind of lessons as a kid, the charm wears off and they quit and don't go back to it. And that could have been for Charlie too, but he was drawn back to the piano at the age of 13. He played tuba in the school's marching band and borrowed a book about acoustics. And he pored over that book. He marked it up and scribbled notes in all the side pages. He was just fascinated and completely absorbed by the physics of acoustics. And then dove into musical theory, just found it so fascinating, the sort of science behind it. Now, around the time he and his family moved from Geneseo to Williamson, New York, just as Charlie was heading into junior high. Now, 13 is not an easy age to be a boy, not at the least one who had sprouted practically overnight to 5 foot 11 inches. And add to that moving to a new community and a new school. Well, suffice it to say that Charlie was having a rough go. Then something his mother said to him at the time was pivotal in turning him back to the piano. Charlie's aunt, Annabelle, was an aspiring concert pianist. And his mom shared with him that for Annabelle, playing the piano was a way to express her feelings. Now, as a sensitive and a creative boy, navigating teen angst and trying to make friends in a new school, this idea really resonated with Charlie. So during the summer that he was 13, Charlie played the piano for 3 or 4 hours a day, every day. He had no teacher at the time. He was learning hymns out of the hymn book on his own. All that practice honed his skills, and he aspired to be better than his mom at playing hymns. And he set the goal to be able to sight read hymns by the time he finished high school. He was highly motivated and very focused. Now, in that year, as he became more involved with the youth at the Williamson Presbyterian Church, he began practicing the organ there too. Now, Williamson is a very small town, about 30 miles east of Rochester, and his house was like 300 feet from the church. And so playing the organ and making mischief with other young teens was a majority of his time, really. And Charlie tells the story of running around with lit candles in the loft with his friend Earl as they peered down at the minister who was going through a wedding rehearsal with a couple. Charlie and his friends had many escapades there, and seriously, just ask Charlie, there's a lot. Very funny. And it's there that Charlie joined the church choir. And with terror and trepidation, he sang his very first solo, squeaking out, "Lord, speak to me that I may speak in living echoes of thy tone." Kind of an irony there. Anyway, but he persevered. Charlie had his very first paid job as a church organist when he was just 14 at the United Methodist Church in Putneyville, New York, just 5 miles north from his hometown of Williamson. And as the crow flies from here, 100 kilometers southwest of Kingston on the south shore of Lake Ontario, right on the shore. So not far from here as the crow flies. He was given a key to his home church to come and go and practice as he pleased. If only they had known about the other capers he was up to, I'm sure they wouldn't have given him the keys with such confidence. It was a clunker of an organ at his home church, and many stops had ciphers. Now, a cipher, for those of you who don't know it, is a note that continues to play on the organ even though the organist has stopped playing it. It just is like, and you know, it can be really problematic. Anyway, so this organ was not in good shape, and the organist at the time practically had to do gymnastics to try to get around all the quirks and problems of the instrument. And she appealed to the church board to have it fixed, but to no avail. She decided one Sunday morning to play all the stops she wanted, regardless if they worked or not. Well, ta-da. The church leadership quickly decided to have the organ rebuilt. That was a time of great joy for Charlie, because every day he would rush home, rush right to the church after school and watch the builders work. He was always very interested in the mechanics of the organ, known as the king of instruments. So really it was a time that just felt like Christmas every day for Charlie. He learned a lot about the workings of the organ by observing the workers and asking many, many, many questions. Unfortunately, at the end of the project, and to Charlie's deep disappointment, the organ builder told the elders of the congregation, quote, "Don't let that kid anywhere near the organ, or he'll pull it all apart." Now, to be fair, Charlie did have a penchant for taking things apart. There was the washing machine at home. The timer didn't work, and so he got a metal cigar box, and he designed a new switch system to control each particular action of the machine. He couldn't put them all at once, just one at a time. Then there was the gas cooking stove that his mom had asked him to clean. Well, before anyone knew it, Charlie had taken it completely apart, including the insulation and all the side panels. When he finally had it put back together, there was the pesky question, I wonder where these bolts go. Oh yeah, and he rewired the kitchen, unbeknownst to his parents. Yesterday, actually, Charlie told me, it's really a wonder I didn't burn that house down. So really, the organ builder had good reason to fear that the neighborhood kid might be bent on destruction. So for a time, Charlie didn't have access to that organ. And around then, he started to take the bus into Rochester to take organ lessons at Eastman School of Music. There he got to dive into more complex organ pieces, including the works of J.S. Bach, which have been a favorite of Charlie's. And he also began to teach piano to a few students in Williamson. This is all like at 15, 16. There is a wonderfully redemptive plot twist in this story, for as 2 years later, when Charlie was 17, the Williamson Presbyterian Church, his home church, with the rebuilt organ, was looking for a new organist. Charlie applied, and it was a competition for the position, and Charlie came out on top over 2 full-fledged adults, a local pianist and piano teacher, and a recent piano undergraduate who graduated from the Eastman School of Music. But as some of you know, organ technique and piano technique is very different, and Charlie was simply more experienced and skilled than the other 2 applicants. While Charlie spent a lot of time crawling up inside the organ in Williamson and many, many other organs over the years, for the record, he didn't pull it apart. Well, not completely anyway. Up until his last year of high school, Charlie had planned to study physics at Caltech in Berkeley, California. And we all know what was happening at Berkeley in the 60s. However, due to some very random events, including seeing an advertisement in a Presbyterian church magazine for Westminster Choir College, Charlie had a change of heart. And against the advice of his grandfather, who said, "You'll never make any money at that," he decided to study music. As deadlines loomed to confirm which college he would attend, some mail went missing. And pretty much at the last minute, Charlie decided to attend Houghton College, a Christian college 30 miles southwest of Rochester. It's there he ended up completing his undergraduate degree in organ performance with a minor in voice. We'll hear a bit about his time at Houghton from his friend Don Warren, who's here. All to say, these early years are the foundations upon which Charlie's professional, spiritual, and family life unfolded. His choice to study music at a Christian college instead of physics at a secular university had massive impacts on Charlie's life. Charlie essentially missed the counterculture movements of the 60s, literally, and he grooved on Bach rather than the Beatles, and then spent 60 plus years in service of and in relationship with churches and Christian communities. Now, to give you a sense of all the many Christian colleges, universities, and communities and churches Charlie has shared his gifts of music with, I made a little slideshow to give you a quick sense of the journey he's taken. While I wish I had easy access to the photographs of the people in each of these communities and congregations, for tonight we'll see the buildings that house the people. But I invite you to imagine all the ways Charlie's warmth and humor and commitment to making and sharing beautiful music, his love of people and joy in community wove its way through the lives of people in each of these places. So, Mayrig, I invite you to start here. So, 1950, Central Presbyterian Church in Geneseo, New York. 1957, Putneyville United Methodist Church in Putneyville, New York. In 1958 to 60, the Williamson Presbyterian Church in Williamson, New York. 1960 to 64, he was a music student at Houghton College. He also was the trumpet trio organist, and in 64 was the director of the girls' choir. From 64 to 66, he was a teacher and organist and choir director at Lorne Park College in Port Credit, a Free Methodist junior college and high school. 1964, is this too fast or is this good? 64 to 67, he was a theological student at somebody else say it. Thank you, I think I spelled it wrong. College, which was an evangelical Anglican college. He didn't end up graduating as an Anglican priest, but he definitely had started thinking he would. Then he was, just a second. Did I meet? I missed St. Matthias. Sorry, going back to 64, 67, St. Matthias, Anglican Church in Toronto, then the theological student at Wycliffe. From 68 to 70, organist and choir director at St. Paul's Roman Catholic Church in Toronto. From 1970 to 73, organist and choir director at St. George's Anglican Church in Oshawa. 1973, he went to Europe to be part of L'Abri Presbyterian community and was a volunteer organist in Switzerland near Villars. 1974 to 76, Spring Garden Baptist Church in Willowdale. He was the organist, choir director, and assistant pastor. In 1976 to 78, he was a music faculty at St. Stephen University, a small Anglican college in St. Stephen, New Brunswick, where his son Jeremy was born. Hi, Jeremy, if you're watching, I think you are. And Adam, and Katya, and Nina. In 1976, there's Charlie there looking good on the right at St. Stephen. This is actually on their website. I was looking, and that's on their website as a historical thing. That picture of Charlie. 1978 to 84, various musical groups at Reba Place Community, a Mennonite Brethren community in Evanston, Illinois. That's where Stephanie was born, and Stephanie's here with us tonight. From 85 to 87, organist and choir director at Trinity United Church in Smiths Falls. And then in 87, we go back to the Catholics again, to St. Francis de Sales Roman Catholic Church in Smiths Falls. Then there's a little spot where he actually wasn't an organist, but was in choirs at, was it St. Paul's? Oh. St. James in Perth. And then in 1990 to 98, organist and choir director at Christ Church Anglican in Gananoque. That's when Charlie and I met during that time when he was serving that congregation. 1998 to 2001, I had a professor, Wayne Sobel, and Wayne was then serving at a congregation in Belleville, and I connected them up, and Charlie ended up being the organist and choir director at St. Matthew's United Church in Belleville for a few years. Coming back to Kingston in 2001 to 2014, Charlie was organist and choir director at Sydenham Street United Church. It's lovely to see a number of people from Sydenham Street here tonight. And in fact, that was his longest tenure at any one community, was at Sydenham Street United Church. Yay! And then finally, as Bob has mentioned, from 2014 to 2020, even though Bob didn't vote for him, Charlie was the organist and choir director of St. James Anglican Church here in Kingston, and where he retired in 2020. I have two more photos. One is of Charlie. This is at Sydenham Street with a friend of ours, Renee. And I have a lot of pictures, actually, of him with young people in our lives, just introducing them to the organ and what an interesting and fun instrument is. And finally, the last picture. This was 2 days ago when he and I were here practicing this and rehearsing the song we're going to sing a little bit later. So I don't know, for me, even just putting that together, and was amazing to think of all those communities that Charlie's been part of and that have been part of his life over 64 years. I'm almost at the end. As many of you know, Charlie is a gifted storyteller and has an incredible memory, and I literally could be here for hours telling you funny, heartwarming, and meaningful stories about Charlie's life from each of these congregations and communities. I could, but I won't. All that to say, if you are interested, I encourage you to ask him a question or two and let him regale you a tale. I'll conclude my comments with this. When I asked Charlie what his greatest joys and learnings from his life making music in Christian communities have been, he said 5 things. First, he said working, sharing, teaching with people in choirs, and making beautiful music together in community. Second was experiencing the pleasure of practicing to get a complex organ piece in his fingers, and then sharing that beautiful music with a congregation in worship. Third was learning how everyone is different and everyone has something to contribute. And to quote Charlie, My way is not the only way, and it took me many years to learn that. But church is a great place to learn that. Fourth, growing in his own spirituality and community. As an avid student of the Bible, metaphysics, and Christian mysticism since high school, Charlie's own spiritual journey has been woven through all the communities, small groups, the Bible studies, the men's groups that he's been part of. And finally, simply loving to climb around the insides of organs and taking things apart and fixing them. While Charlie is 80 today and retired at 78, I don't think he will ever tire of conversing and connecting with people, enjoying beautiful music, wanting to draw out the best in others, asking big questions about the nature of reality, wanting to take things apart and fix them, or telling a good story. This is the Charlie that many of us know and love, and who we celebrate with and give thanks for tonight.
Wonderful, Wendy. That's a hard act to follow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can affirm that Charlie is a detailed storyteller and has a memory like an elephant. It amazes me. But be prepared to spend some time if you ask him for one of those stories, because he doesn't omit a single detail. Michael Capon, who I didn't vote for either, but he got it anyway, is going to favor us with an organ piece. And I don't know if, Michael, do you want to say a word or two about it?
I won't try to follow Wendy's act there, but I will just say that I've known Charlie for many years, longer than I can remember. And Charlie is not only a wonderful musician, he's a beautiful person. And I'm sure you'll agree, he's one of the most loving, caring, empathetic people I know. It's just a joy to be able to have him as part of our lives. And it's a real honor and a wonderful thing for me to be able to follow here his footsteps and the work that he's been doing here and to build on that. And it's also such a wonderful thing that Charlie continues to be part of this community. He's a beautiful person to have around, that's for sure. So we asked Charlie what he would like to hear tonight, and one of the things he requested was the music of J.S. Bach. And I think the only way I can follow Wendy's beautiful talk is with some Bach. And in particular, he asked for the Fugue in E-flat by Bach, which is known colloquially as the St. Anne Fugue, which is the tune that we just sang for O God, Our Help in Ages Past. It's considered that the similarity is coincidental, but that won't stop us making the connection. So here's the great Fugue in E-flat by J.S. Bach.
Thank you, Michael. It's now my pleasure to welcome Don Warren, whom I just met. And he's described here as a university friend and musical collaborator of Charlie. So I have a sense these two go back quite a ways. And there's probably some stories he can tell and some he can't. So, Don, it's yours.
Wendy said I had 3 to 5 minutes, so not a lot here, but I have a lot I could tell you otherwise. So 63 years ago, bring us up higher. That better? All right, 63 years ago, 3 college freshmen got together. They were all trumpet players. And we decided we'd like to follow the footsteps of a previous group, the Houghton College Trumpet Trio. And we got together, but we had one problem. We didn't have an accompanist. Somebody mentioned that in the music building, there was this wonderful, talented pianist, organist, that would be a wonderful addition to our trumpet trio. And so we went and met with Charlie, and I'm not sure how much twisting the arm it took. However, we were very pleased that he said yes, he will be a part of the trumpet trio. So the Houghton College Trumpet Trio version number 2 played for 4 years at various Christian camps in the summertime. We went at least 10,000 miles each summer. And if you ever want to know how to get to know somebody, you drive that far in a little station wagon. There's only 3 in the back seat, 1 in the front, and I think that some of us had longer legs, often got the front seat more than the back seat. But that was a time where we really got to know and built a friendship that has lasted 63 years. So each summer we would go to Christian camps, youth camps, etc., and play. And actually, at the end of 4 years, Barb, my wife, and I were getting married in Massachusetts. And so we said, Charlie, we need a processional. And we need a processional with 3 trumpets. And of course, I was in front, so I wasn't playing, so we brought in another trumpet, but we had 3 trumpets. And he composed this wonderful processional on a pipe organ in Massachusetts at a Congregational church. I contacted 2 other members of the trio. They can't be here tonight. One lives in Pennsylvania. Ralph Marks lives in Pennsylvania. And Dave lives in Georgia, Dave Manny. And so I believe they're listening tonight. I don't know where the camera is, but hi. So I asked them, do you have some memories that you can give that being you're not here? And I know Charlie's saying that's dangerous. But Ralph recounted the time that we had just left a youth camp, and Charlie was sitting in the back seat, and oftentimes he kept his music sitting on his lap, and all of a sudden he realized his music wasn't there. And just at that time, another car pulled up beside and rolled down the window and said, there's some leaves of papers flying off the roof of the car. So we pulled off to the side. This was desperate because this was all of Charlie's music. Charlie did most of the arrangements for the trumpet trio, and we would have been lost. So we scoured the whole, I don't know how many miles we scoured, but we did recover every single piece. Dave had this following added. It says, Charlie's discipline as a music major pushed us all towards excellence, and his love of classical music impacted our arrangements and the sound we produced. Dave also mentioned, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Charlie was a good friend and one of the brothers I never had growing up. And I think we all felt that after. It's interesting, that time of bonding in that period of time has lasted 63 years. The trumpet trio got together at the 25th graduation, anniversary of our graduation at Houghton, played. And now we've also done it at least 2 or 3 different locations since then, at either Ralph's church or Dave's church or our church. And so we've kept that friendship going for that period of time. Charlie, it's been an honor to count you as one of those friendships that have formed early on in our lives, and it's continued over the years. Congratulations as we celebrate this evening your 63 years of music ministry and friendship.
Just like yesterday. There you go. Yeah. Thank you, Don, for taking the time to put that together and for inviting the participation of our friends who are online. And the camera's here, by the way, I think, if anyone's looking. And there's one up there, too. They're both there. They're everywhere. No surprise that Charlie and his love of music ended up partnering with someone who also holds music very special in their hearts. And Wendy and Charlie share that music together in their journey, and they're going to grace us with some music now.
Oh, he forgot about this part. I just want to say that this is a song I wrote maybe, 12 or 13 years ago, and I wrote it on guitar, and it had a little folky tune, was a little folky bit, and then I went to record some music, and Charlie said, I'd really like to turn this into something different. Would you be open to me doing an arrangement of it, a piano arrangement? And I said, sure. And then he did it, and it felt like a completely different song, and I actually couldn't sing it. And had a very hard time recording it, because it was like, oh, it feels like a different song. And in fact, for this event, initially, Jim Biaggi was going to sing this, because I was like, oh, I don't feel like it's inside of me somehow, because it feels like such a different treatment. And, but I heard Charlie practicing all these weeks, and then I started singing along with him, and then Jim got a cold, and then it was like, oh, well, maybe I could sing it. So it's really meaningful for us to sing it together, and hopefully you'll hear Jim sing it another time. I really look forward to hearing that.
Today, time out of time, and in the quiet house I sit and let the world go by, the world go by. Children's laughter in the streets, the traffic's rumble roar, as the shadows of the afternoon slip across the wooden floor, across the floor. and my mind so often crowded full, all at once is still and free, still and free, still and free. An hour came to me today, time out of time, and in the quiet house I sit and let the world go by. The world go by. The world go by.
Thanks, Charlie and Wendy. There's no comment to say on that. Thank you very much. John Vines, where are you? John, this isn't on the program, but John did ask for, I think he said 2 minutes, so I'm going to hold you to that, John. As John has acted in the capacity as of warden at this parish, and so would have had lots of interaction with Charlie in that capacity, and he'd like to say a few words. John.
I'm going to first thank Wendy for giving us a wonderful background at Charlie, so I've got something to say. Charlie was here just before we became, Stephen Hiscock and I became wardens. And Charlie was always huffing and puffing about the quality of the organ, quality of the pianos, quality of this and things. So I said, well, Charlie, let's do something about it. So it wasn't long before we got ourselves into the back of the organ to almost sweep it out. And then after a while, with the experts who really knew how to fix organs, we came up with a lot of repair ideas. And meanwhile, the whole music program at St. James was going forward wonderfully. And I was very proud of him. And we got a lot of money coming in, and we managed to really build the organ up. And I think Michael, wherever he is, do appreciate some of the stuff we got done. And we can thank Charlie for all of that. And meanwhile, it was a lot of fun doing it. We had the rats. When we had to get in behind and join pipes together, because the rats and the mice had got into the console as well, to fix them all. So we all learned that. And the other thing that always amazed me with Charlie being around was why all the pianos had to be watered. He had all these things that kept the right humidity inside the pianos, and I'm not quite sure if they're all still there, but maybe they should be. Well, on behalf of the parish, when I was warden, I'd like to thank you very much for all the wonderful things you did for us, and thanks for going. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good words. I'd like to share some reminiscences from a former chorister in this parish, a chorister of Charlie's, and unfortunately she can't be here tonight, but she sent along some greetings, and as I read those, you'll understand why she's not here, and perhaps the irony of that. And there's a picture, apparently. There you go. So, Elaine Bailey says, I met Charlie when I was 15. So Charlie, I don't know how old you would have been, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But 15. So I've known him for 52 years. Charlie is the reason I sing. Two good friends, sopranos, my brother, tenor, and myself, an alto, were in the St. George Oshawa choir at the time. Charlie encouraged us all to sing more, and he got us doing small group pieces, little solo bits here and there too. We were too young to know enough to be nervous or worried, and it was so much fun. We sang some amazing music in the wonderful choir. Thanks to Charlie. What a gift he gave us, and we are still singing. I also remember several pool parties at my parents' home with his amazing group. Don, and Don Bailey is Elaine's husband, Don and I met when I was 17, and Charlie even got him singing with us. Charlie had moved on from St. George's Church by the time we were getting married, but he came back for our wedding. I was in the vestibule with my dad, getting ready to go down the aisle when Charlie came barreling through the door just in time. What a clear memory I have of that moment. Okay, so you know what? We find out he's human like the rest of us, right? Anyway, Elaine says, it was a joy to rekindle our friendship years later here in Kingston at St. James. Our lives have definitely been enriched and blessed for knowing him. Congratulations, Charlie, Elaine says, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. Sorry I can't be with you this evening, but I'm singing in the Kingston Chamber Choir concert. Imagine that. Love to you and Wendy as you move into the next adventure of your life. Elaine and Don Bailey. With the shaggy blonde hair? Yeah, okay, there you go. Elaine's not in the picture. I see. Okay. All right, great. 1970. So, Margaret Ford is a parishioner here at St. James and has also gifted us with piano music at different times, and she's a chorister as well. Margaret, I'm going to invite you forward, and you can say what you want about the piece you're going to play.
It is an honor for me to play a piece of music for you, Charlie. Charlie has been a wonderful, patient, and kind choir director. And I sang sometimes in the choir here, but I always enjoyed it. It was comfortable, and you're just such a lovely man. So congratulations on your retirement. I hope you're enjoying it. You deserve it. And I'm very glad I chose Bach tonight. I didn't know that was your favorite, so.
Thank you, Margaret. Brad Mills is the president of the Royal Canadian College of Organists Kingston Centre and is an organist and colleague of Charlie's, and he's going to bring a few words for us. Please, Brad.
So my first words tonight are to bring you greetings and congratulations from your colleagues in the Royal Canadian College of Organists, Kingston Centre. Charlie and I have worked together on the executive now for I think about 12 years, and he's been just a very important person on our executive. I have known Charlie since about 1984 when he moved to the Perth area, and he took up positions there, as Wendy mentioned earlier, and I couldn't remember which churches you'd been in the area, but Wendy reminded me. So you were over at Trinity United in Smiths Falls for a time, and then at the Catholic Church in Smiths Falls, and you also did some playing at St. James Anglican in Perth too. So while I was at St. Paul's United in Perth, Charlie was moving around the area as he's wont to do, and going through a few more of his positions there. I wanted to just talk briefly about some of the hats that Charlie has worn over the years and the sort of the roles he's played in vis-a-vis myself. So that first role was as a musical colleague as we were in our church jobs in the Perth area. He had a little sideline for a number of years called Walker Musical Services, and I still have some music with his stamps on them. And I know that I bought quite a bit of choir music from you for our choir. And I believe I bought a keyboard at one point for my school, maybe, or something. I can't remember what. But anyway, he was a music sales rep for a time. At one point, I don't know if this came up this evening, but Charlie decided to become a high school teacher, and I had a 30-year career as a high school music teacher, and he became my student teacher for a couple of weeks, and actually boarded with us, as I recall, in Perth. So he stayed with us, and we drove to school every day. And then got a job in communications technology, I think. And that has come in very handy in our RCCO Center, which I'll mention later. Then I think in the early 2000s or so, we presented Rutter's Requiem at our church in Perth, and Charlie's hat or role at that time was accompanist, and so you accompanied for us in that. And then just in recent years then, as I mentioned at the start, we've been colleagues in our professional association, the Royal Canadian College of Organists, and it's nice to see some other members from the RCCO here tonight. Charlie's training in ComTech and his penchant for taking things apart and dealing with technical issues has been very, very useful for us. And I know he had a big part in getting our projection system going and our ability to show large screen pictures of organists at concerts, and that's been much appreciated. So to quote Bob's opening comment at the beginning of the program tonight, we'd like to wish him the best on his retirement and congratulations on his, as Bob said, long and varied career. So congratulations.
Thank you, Brad. So Wendy told us that in spite of this long and varied, Charlie's longest position or posting was at the Sydenham Street United Church. Is that right, Charlie? Yeah. So we have a few people from that chapter of Charlie's life. Donna Adelia is going to sing a song for us, accompanied by Michael on the piano, and she can tell you why this song. Okay, she won't tell you anything.
I heard there was a sacred chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth, I didn't come to fool you. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. We're here today to celebrate the years of music Charlie made. His patience and his talents, they've empowered us. The choirs he's led, the stories shared, have brought us here to show we care and offer to him all our hallelujahs. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah,
That was wonderful, Donna, and thanks for that additional verse. I'm sure Leonard Cohen would be pleased. There you go, right. Thank you. So we've had Dawn and we've had Donna, and now we have Don Mitchell again. Don Mitchell is also a colleague of Charlie's from his Sydenham Street days. Thanks, Don.
Hello, everyone. So I first met Charlie Walker when I was hired to work for Sydenham Street United Church in a newly created position that was secular and was tasked with managing and growing the activity of the building, both the church and community. And it feels like yesterday, but... Well, I don't recall precisely my first engagement with Charlie. He was the music director, organist, choral director, minister of music, a remarkable talent and steeped in knowledge. And I was undoubtedly so secular and naive that I momentarily believed Charlie had quite literally been around since the church's organ's inception. And obviously, I was mistaken. Yet Charlie, like many other local organists and music directors that I have had the pleasure to meet, are these diverse artists that through their work they amplify the old soul in worship music. But in most cases, as you've heard tonight, it's a fraction of their respective artistry. Renaissance people that seem crafty as the complex organ's construct itself. Anyway, after my initial impression, I came to think of Charlie as, interestingly, 1960s, 1860s, and 1360s. Timeless, ageless, tireless, not retired. The Charlie Walker I've known for almost 13 years is kind, intelligent, informed, caring, mathematical, scientific, yet visionary, talkative, interested and interesting, complex and paradoxical. Edgar Casey meets Richard Feynman meets Jeff the Dude Bridges, perhaps. So a few anecdotes for your consideration. I fondly recall a rare disagreement we had about church parking and enforcement at the church lot. Charlie simply wanted his parking space to be empty for choir rehearsals when he arrived on Thursday nights. And Don, as the building manager, stubbornly, not so keen on guaranteeing that want. The song of Charlie's unique, exasperated cry stays with me to this day. It was more Charlie Brown, ah! than anything else that comes to mind. A fair response to my refusal to ward off the tides of the evening traffic. However, he loosed his abundant keys out of his hand, and they soared countertenor high through the room. Now, I suspect we have differing recollections. I imagine that I, Keanu Reeves' slow-like motion, swung my arms, bent my head almost down to the tile floor to avoid his jangling missile. But Charlie, since you're retiring, I'll confess that the keys might have hit the ceiling and just bounced harmlessly into the corner, nowhere near me. Fair distance. Yet truly I have never seen Charlie angry. Not even that one time. All I saw Charlie was frustrated. For Charlie, in my experience, is measured, thoughtful, and present. Always. Charlie considers others and is helpful beyond his role. As a work colleague and as someone finding their way in life and work, I appreciated his assistance with everything from those annoying POP and IMAP email account settings, website designs and administration, to organ repairs and everything historically church. Who else, certainly no other organist I've met, would allow an operations manager to commandeer his private office to rent to a secular community-led organization. I essentially said, Charlie, you rehearse in the lower hall, you lead service in the sanctuary, and beyond that, you really have little need for an office. Can you use the choir room as your office instead? I think some people forget, but it was really Charlie's willingness to make space for change that led to 5 new not-for-profits or arts groups to move into Sydenham Street United Church, now the Spire. Now, these are my words, but Charlie once told me that he felt that the camaraderie, togetherness, sharing of choir, or to put it differently, the tea and cookies with the conversation, were as important as the notes and hymns of singing as a choir. Or put it differently, he really impressed upon me that it was about the people, and when you showed up, being there and interacting and being with the people. And with that meaning, congregation shifted for me. I'm fortunate to be friends with Charlie and Wendy outside of our work relationship. Our families have now, for about a decade, gathered with other friends at Christmas to table read and then stage an adapted reading of A Christmas Carol for local charity. And it's as much about the tea and cookies and the congregation as Dickens' words. I've always adored that Charlie reads Bob Cratchit and Wendy and my children round out the noisy Cratchits. There's a line that always makes me smile. And no, it's not the one about they're not a handsome family. Truly, it's the line where Cratchit describes how nephew Fred stops him in the street to speak to him that day. It's the words, "If I can be of service to you in any way, that's where I live. Pray, come to me." Now, it wasn't for for the sake of anything he might be able to do for us, so much as his kind way that was quite delightful. And this is something that, to me, Charlie embodies in all aspects of his life. It gives me inspiration in my life and work, including my present employment. Thank you, Charlie. So, retirement. Perhaps you are no longer like the youngish tailor of Fiddler on the Roof model, with his wonder of wonders, miracle of miracles, your long hair and head floating above the floor in some wheeling cartwheel, as I know was the way you rolled in your younger days, though your hair is still long. But toss your keys, move forwards, and for that, this is a miracle too. And of all God's miracles, large and small, the most miraculous one of all is the one I thought I'd never see. Charlie Walker is now a retiree.
Thank you, Don. Let's sing together. This is God's wondrous world. This isn't in the hymnal, is it, Michael? Or is it? No. Okay. It's all up here then. Okay. Please feel free to stand if you wish. Thanks. So Charlie gets the last word. And he's got a whole binder there, so I'm a little bit concerned. But yeah, people didn't bring their pillows and quilts, Charlie.
You didn't know you were in for this, did you?
Well, I don't. We'll haul you off if we need to. But anyway, Charlie, what a wonderful tribute. And yeah, give us some words, and then Wendy, you're going to have us all sing a song together, and then we'll go for some goodies and visiting.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, that'll help, won't it? Folks, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say to all this. It's been such a wonderful evening. It really has. And as I look around and see all these wonderful faces of people that I love so much from all sorts of places and years, and I'm just blown away by it. Thank you so much. I don't want to talk very long because you've been sitting for quite a while, but let me just see if I can summarize some of what I had in mind here. Wendy asked me the other day what was my focus in my career, and there were 3 things that I came up with. Music, of course, was one of them. I've always loved music. And the second one was technical things, which I've always been interested in. And the last thing is people. And it took me a while to really realize what I was doing. And I just love working with people because I need people. I grew up very shy, and I had only a few friends in church. It was in our church community. And so people were great. And Don, you were talking about at Houghton University what it was like when we were there. And those 3 guys were like the brothers I never had. And we did amazing things, not only me leaving the music on the roof of the car. I can't believe we didn't get killed because it was one of these freeways, and it had just gone under an overpass, and it swerved to the right. And I looked back, and these music pages were flying all over the highway. I'm surprised that nobody got run over with that. And so that was a lot of fun, and you guys were just wonderful. But let's see. It's interesting how we're all tied together. And as I look back on my life, all my friends are linked together in one way or another. The friends that I've had for a long time. Don had a brother who was chaplain in a school in Port Credit. And he said, why don't you come up here and teach music in this school? You can start the music department. So I did. And I had a choir, and we traveled at Easter and sang in different churches. And that's what brought me to Canada in the first place. In those days, you could just sail across the border and say, the guard would say, and where are you going? And I said, oh, I'm going to Port Credit. I teach there. And he said, go ahead, sir. And after 3 years, somebody said, you know, it would be a good idea if you got landed papers and be a landed. And I said, oh, sure, okay. And but it was like that in those days, and it's not quite so much that way now. Well, after Lorne Park College, while I was there, I got a job at St. Matthias Anglican Church, Bellwoods Trinity Park area in Toronto. And Moore Smith was the rector. And some of you, how many of you know who Moore Smith was? Yes. He retired here, he and his wife, and they died here. And I was asked by Bob Hales to play his funeral service. And so I got to see all his kids were all here, and I got to see them after years and years of not seeing them. That was a real connection. And I had actually visited him and his wife, Violet, at one point too. It was just wonderful to see them. Then after St. Matthias, as I said, his name was Moore Smith. That was my first Anglican experience. And while I was there were several of us that were going to seminary together, all from the same parish. So we went to Wycliffe College, and I got to be one of the chapel organists, and we wound up, my 3 friends and I wound up teaching part of the church music program while we were there. It was a Harry Potter scene. I don't know how many of you have been in an Anglican seminary, but it was, you know, you eat in the refectory with your black gowns on, and there's a stage at the front with the tables up there, and that's where the faculty are all sitting. And us plebes were down below, you see. It's just like a scene out of Harry Potter. It was really... And then there were the other times when we would run around in the walnut-paneled drawing room with our sherry while we had meetings with the other students in the faculty. It was interesting, and theologically, I learned a lot while I was there. I had people like Tom Harper and Reg Stackhouse, who were some of my professors. Anyway, when I was in Toronto also, I took organ lessons at the University of Toronto. And I gave some recitals in Toronto, not too many, but I did give some. I studied liturgy at St. Michael's Choir School in the summers, Catholic liturgy, and I really got that down and working with plain song and those kinds of things. I finally went on from St. Matthias to St. Paul's Roman Catholic Church in Toronto. And that was a big, huge parish. Wonderful, wonderful old organ. It was not particularly huge, but it had, the church had a 5 or 6 second echo, and it was Romanesque, and it had paintings of the conversion of St. Paul and all along the ceiling and things like that. And that was a lot of fun. I had a girls' choir there, my very first girls' choir that I ever had. And from there, I went to St. George's, Oshawa, where I had a fine choir, wonderful people that I really cared about. And my choir boys were monkeys, and I really learned what it was like. I used the Royal School of Church Music, the English system, with those choir boys. I had to go out. I had some of them come in for training with the singing, because it's a very rigorous program, the ones where you wear all the badges and the medals and things like this. But then I'd go out for choir practice, and I'd haul them out of the tree in the backyard of the church. And one time when I came in, I opened the door and a bucket of water came down on top of me. So I got an experience with Anglican choir boys. Another time I had to drag 2 of them away for playing chess in the middle of the sermon. in the pew at the front, you know. And as was mentioned, Elaine Bailey, Elaine Spurl it was back then, she was in my girls' choir, as was her sister Diana and her brother Glenn. And Elaine was just rock solid. She hasn't changed. Her personality is still the same as it always was there, and she was amazing in high school. And we did a lot of singing together. And I remember one of those pool parties that was read from her, what she wrote. At the pool party, it was a hot, hot, hot summer day, very humid. And after the party was over, and this was me with the choir kids, somebody said, well, what are we going to do now? And they all said, oh, let's go to the church and sing anthems. I said, what? I said, it's a stone church, and the walls will be radiating heat even at night. Oh, we want to do that. So we went to the church and we sang madrigals, and not madrigals, motets, and all kinds of things. And Elaine just took that ball and carried it. That's what happened. And she's an amazing, and she was when I came here in 2014, she was the choir director. And so that came around too. That's one of those other connections I was talking about. After St. George's, I was on a real spiritual search, and I wound up at a Presbyterian community in Switzerland, Francis Schaeffer. Does anybody know about Francis Schaeffer? Yeah, well, I was in that community for several months, and I was organist there while I was there. Beautiful thing, nestled in the Alps. It was just wonderful. And that's where I met my wife, Susan, my first wife. Her brother was my roommate. And we had some very interesting things that I don't need to get into now, but Jeff and I, we had our fun. And also her other brother, who I was helping him learn to drive, and I taught him a lesson in skid control in the wintertime with your car. And he loved it, and I did too, until the time when his sister and my then wife, we were all out together, and Robbie was driving, and he was experimenting, and she's screaming in the back seat. Does anybody remember the Tam O'Shanter in Toronto that burned? Well, at that point, I was flying over the Tam O'Shanter in a helicopter, in a four-seater Piper Cub, with a friend of mine who happened to be my bank accountant. He was a teller in my bank, actually, and we were up there with one of the women in my choir, and one of the women from my apartment building. And I was in the front, and he was showing me how to fly the plane, because I was in the other seat, you know. And I said, "Can I try going up and down?" He said, "Sure." And I go, and it goes like this, and they all screamed in the back seat. But we flew over the Tam O'Shanter while it was on fire, and it was like this big block like that. And there were all these little teeny-weeny toy cars, trucks going around with squirting little squirts that went in about 5 feet into that building. And it was just, I thought if those people down there, those firemen, could see what was going on, they'd go home, because it's hopeless, you know. But we had a lot of fun at St. George's. And anyway, I was at L'Abri, and that's where I met Susan. After that, we came back, got married in Montreal, and we went to a Mennonite community, Reba Place Fellowship. And Bob and I have talked about that, because Bob spent a lot of time in the Mennonite church too. And it was a real Christian community. We shared many things in common. It was a consensus model, and that was hard sometimes, because all decisions had to be consensus. Everybody had to agree before we could move forward on major decisions. At that time, I was trained as a Suzuki piano teacher in Chicago, and started my own business. For 8 months, I was organist in St. Mark's Lutheran Church in Chicago, and Stephanie was born there as well. Then finally, we decided to move back to Canada again, because our parents were not getting to see our kids grow up. So we moved to Perth, and Susan sang in the choir, and I was at Trinity, as we've heard, in Smith Falls. And by the way, Brad, where's Brad? Yeah, Brad. While I was still in Chicago and we were planning to move to Perth, we had one set of friends in Perth, and that's all. We didn't know anybody else in town. But I subscribed to the Perth Courier newspaper, and I followed everything that was going on musically in Perth, and it had a lot about you. We had just gotten married, I think. But there was a whole lot about your things that you were doing in Perth, and I thought, I got to meet this guy. He sounds really interesting. So we did move to Perth. And one thing you didn't mention was musical theater. The Perth Community Choir was put on some wonderful, wonderful productions. I think, Don, you came to some of them. You and Barbara came to some of those productions. And as somebody has said, you mentioned that I was model in Fiddler on the Roof. I was in South Pacific as a music director. And then I was in the band for My Fair Lady. But I think, Brad, you were the music director for Fiddler on the Roof, weren't you? Yeah, you were the one. Yeah, you were. So we were there in Perth. I'm almost done here, I think. Music students, I had 50 piano students, and we gave recitals twice a year. And Susan and I separated in 1990, and I went to Gananoque and applied for Teachers College. And I was at Michael Caswell's church, Christ Church. And at the same time, a friend of mine said, look, we have this Renaissance group here that meets every week, and our director is leaving. Would you come and be the new director for Music's Pleasures, which I did for 7 years. But the music director that I was replacing was a young man in his mid-20s by the name of Michael Capon. So Michael was off to Australia, and he came back, how many years later? Was a year after that? Of course, you were in Montreal. And before he went to Australia, I went to Brockville to hear him play, and he played some beautiful Messiaen, amongst other things. And I thought, wow, this guy's going to be something. He already is. And by the way, the piece he played tonight, thank you for that, Michael. That is my favorite piece. That was my audition piece for St. James in 2014. And first started working on it when I was halfway through university, and it was in the summertime, and so I picked up the music. I'd been assigned to do it, and I started learning it way back then, which would have been back in about 1962 or 3. And I love that piece. It's always been my favorite. So let's see if I get just a bit to the end of it. When I was at in Music's Pleasures, we gave a concert. It was Mark Surratt phoned me and said, would you be willing with your group to come and give a concert at St. George's? One of the summer concerts that they do every summer. So on the 24th of August, we did that. And after the concert was over, I went looking around the church for a program to put in my archive file. And there was a woman sitting in the back writing postcards. And I said, oh, hello. And she said, I so enjoyed the music. And on she went. And it was Wendy. And I said, oh, do you sing? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, would you be interested in auditioning for our group? And she said, yes, I would. And I said, okay, well, let me get your phone number and we can arrange something. She said, well, why can't we do it right now? And I said, oh, I suppose we could. And so we went into one of the choir rooms and I auditioned her and I said, wow, you're in. Have you had lunch yet? And she said, no, and we've been together ever since. And that was in 1995. So I owe Mark Surratt for that. But that's not all I owe him for, too, because he then played our wedding at the Little Cat Center when we were married. And in the middle of his beautiful rendition of Jesu Joy of Our Desiring, with a flute player who was a friend of mine, Wendy's brother, who plays harmonica, thought it was great. And he starts playing along with the flute obligato on the harmonica. And then Wendy gave him the evil eye. And he stopped. Mark was very gracious. He was just great. So, and finally what Mark did for me was, well, as you may know, he was at St. George's for a bit of time, and then he went on to Sydenham Street for a couple of years. And I got to know him there because I was the organist, and Cantabile choirs, they're all there. And so we got to be friends, and he said, by the way, he said, I'm going to be leaving. If you're interested, you might be interested in applying. So that's how it came about that I was the organist at the Spire. So you see, there's all these ways that we weave together. My whole life has been shaped by so many people, and it still is to this day. I could tell you many more stories. I don't want to bore you any further. One more is Bill Morrow, who's a dear, dear friend. And he was one of Wendy's professors when she was at the Theological College here in Kingston. And we struck this friendship, and we've been friends ever since then. We've been in 3 men's groups together. Bill's a great guy. And that, I think, is, I don't want to miss anybody. When I applied for the job here, I had Elaine Bailey, who was an old friend, and I had Dave Barton, who he was one of my supervising teachers when I went to Teachers College. And I owe Dave a lot for that. And I always admired what he does here that he never talks about or sings about, but I don't know if you realize it, but Dave Barton is an amazing guy. And he does so much. And I always, for all those years I was here, I thought, I get paid to do this, and he does it for nothing. And I think he deserves a great deal of credit for that, and I want to say that, yes. And so the last person is Wendy and I moved 2.5 years ago to Mowat Avenue. It so happened the house we bought was right across the street from Irene Swift, who died last night. And she was a wonderful choir member, and she'll be missed. She had a big battle with lung cancer, and she finally succumbed to that last night. So I've had a wonderful choir here. I had a wonderful choir at Sydenham Street, and so many of you people are here tonight, and I really thank you for that. And Donna, I want to say one thing about you. My first rehearsal, since you haven't said much, my first rehearsal at Sydenham Street with the choir, Donna is one of these people that can just nail you. And she immediately asked me a question right in the middle of the rehearsal that was a test question. Do you remember doing that? I forgot what it was even, but I thought, oh, this is interesting. Here's a woman who's going to be interesting. And I like people who speak their mind. And Donna's always been one of those people, and I've enjoyed working with her a lot and accompanying her. And there was one other person, and who was it? You don't know? Okay. I don't think I can remember. Well, maybe that's enough for me to say for now, but I want to thank you all for what you've done tonight. I really have appreciated it so much, and I love you all. Oh, Dennis and I played music at Sydenham Street. That's where we met. Gosh, as I look around, so many of you, thank you.
That Charlie has gifted us and that we have been part of. We're going to end with a song. I'll sing it line by line, and I think it's an appropriate one to sing at the end of this gathering. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. We give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way.
Thanks, Charlie and Wendy. And, by the way, I do want to assure you, Charlie, you have my vote. You maybe didn't have it in 14, but you got it now. Okay? Thanks all for joining in this celebration, and let's continue our time of celebration and fellowship in the hall next door. And have a good night and safe travels. Thank you all.
Thanks for hosting. Is that okay? Good job. Yeah, great. Thanks. It's great. Nice job, Wendy. Oh my gosh. It's great. It was great.
I'll give Charlie his mask back.